Your mother is a vulgar farmhand, while mine is an esteemed lady." The husband sneered, glancing at his mother-in-law during their family supper. Unperturbed, the mother-in-law waited. The very next day, he received a notification from a notary. "Before we proceed further, kindly share which country you are viewing this from. Enjoy the story." Ekaterina felt a pang of awkwardness as she accepted the felicitations. 35 years of age, an era where one no longer anticipates miracles, yet still harbors hope for brighter days. The modest living room, typically a sanctuary of comfort, was now brimming with guests, close friends, professional colleagues, and naturally her family, her mother, Maria Semyonovna, and her husband, Alexander. Ekaterina cast a fleeting glance his way. He stood apart, sipping expensive cognac, animatedly recounting something to a colleague. His tone carried an air of superiority, a trait Katya had been noticing with increasing frequency. Maria Semyonovna bustled around the table, arranging plates of salads and assorted cold cuts. As always, she appeared unassuming. A simple dress, a neat hairstyle, a scattering of fine lines around her eyes. Her movements exuded care and warmth. Katya cherished her mother, her tranquility, and her wisdom. The evening unfolded as expected. Guests dined, drank, and congratulated Katya. Toasts and well wishes filled the air. When it was Alexander's turn to speak, a hush fell over the room. He cleared his throat, surveyed the gathering, and commenced his address. "My dearest Katyusha," he began, his voice laced with feigned affection, "this is your day, and I wish to propose a toast to you. You are a wonderful wife, a remarkable homemaker." Katya offered a faint smile, yet a sense of unease began to stir within her. She sensed what was coming, but Alexander paused. It is impossible to overstate the significant role a mother plays in every woman's life. And here, he turned towards Maria Semyonovna, we observe two vastly different approaches to upbringing and lifestyle. Katya felt a flush creep up her neck. She attempted to halt him with her gaze, but Alexander seemed oblivious to everything around him. "My mother," he continued, his voice rising. "Valentina Pavlovna is the epitome of elegance, intellect, and refinement. She is a professor, a doctor of sciences, who has traveled the globe. And Maria Semyonovna?" He once again turned to his mother-in-law and smirked. "A simple woman, who spent her entire life working at a factory." A palpable silence descended upon the room. The guests stopped chewing, their eyes fixed on Alexander. Maria Semyonovna, standing by the table, lowered her gaze. "Do not misunderstand me," Alexander pressed on. "I have no intention whatsoever of offending Maria Semyonovna, but as the saying goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Katya was incredibly fortunate to have escaped that. He faltered, searching for the word. "Milieu." Katya could bear it no longer. She sprang to her feet. "Sasha!" she cried, but it was too late. As if he couldn't hear her, he continued. "Let us be frank." He swept his gaze across the guests. "Maria Semyonovna is a farmhand, and my mother is an elite woman. It's like night and day." The silence became deafening. Katya saw tears slowly tracing paths down her mother's cheeks. She rushed to her and embraced her. "Mom, don't listen to him," she whispered. "He's just drunk." But Maria Semyonovna gently pulled away, lifted her head, and met Alexander's eyes directly. Her gaze held no fear, no hurt, only disdain. "You are a scoundrel," she stated quietly. Alexander chuckled. "What are you implying, Maria Semyonovna? I am merely stating facts." "Facts?" Maria Semyonovna echoed. "The facts are that you are rude and uncouth, and you've forgotten whose home you're in." Alexander frowned. "I live here as a member of the family." "No," Maria Semyonovna countered. "You live here by my generosity, and it seems you do not appreciate it." Katya felt an overwhelming surge of anger. She looked at her husband. "Sasha," she said in a firm voice, "I implore you, be quiet. You have crossed every line." But Alexander, as if possessed, could not stop. "What do you understand, Katya?" he retorted. "You simply don't see how your mother is holding you back." "My mother is the person dearest to me," Katya replied. "And I will not permit you to insult her." "Enough!" Katya shouted, unable to restrain herself any longer. "Get out!" Alexander stared at her in surprise. "What did you say?" "I said get out," Katya repeated. Alexander remained silent for several seconds, processing her words. Then a disdainful smirk spread across his face. "Very well," he said. "As you wish. I wasn't particularly eager to stay anyway." He placed his glass on the table and, without a word to anyone, left the room. The guests, as if awakening from a trance, began to whisper amongst themselves. Katya felt herself trembling. She hugged her mother and wept. "It's all right, my darling," Maria Semyonovna soothed. "Everything will be all right." But Katya knew nothing would ever be the same. Alexander had gone too far. He had insulted not only her mother but her as well, and she could no longer tolerate it. After Alexander's departure, the evening was irrevocably ruined. The guests, feeling awkward, began to leave. Katya apologized to them and thanked them for their well wishes. When the last guest departed, she found herself alone with her mother. Maria Semyonovna quietly began clearing the table. Katya watched her, a heavy sense of guilt settling upon her. She knew she was to blame for Alexander's behavior. She had allowed it. She had been afraid of losing him. "Mom," Katya said, "forgive me. It's my fault. I should have stopped him sooner." Maria Semyonovna ceased her task and looked at her daughter. "You are not to blame for anything, my darling. He's the one at fault. He simply doesn't know how to respect people." "But why does he act this way?" Katya asked. Maria Semyonovna sighed. "He feels insecure," she replied. "He constantly needs to prove his superiority. He believes that because he is educated and from a wealthy family, he is better than others, but that is not so." "And what is so?" Katya inquired. "So," answered Maria Semyonovna, "is when you respect people, regardless of their education or background. So is when you appreciate what you have, rather than chasing what you lack. So is when you love your loved ones and care for them." Katya pondered her mother's words. She understood that Maria Semyonovna was right. Alexander had never valued what he possessed. He was always striving for more, for something better. And in this pursuit, he had lost the most important thing, respect for others. "Mom," Katya said, "I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm tired of his arrogance and constant insults." Maria Semyonovna hugged her. "I know, my darling," she said. "What should I do?" Katya asked. "Do what you believe is right," Maria Semyonovna replied. "Listen to your heart." Katya nodded. She knew what she had to do. She had to put an end to this nightmare. The following morning, Alexander awoke with a throbbing headache. The previous night's revelry, generously lubricated with cognac, had taken its toll. He winced, recalling his triumphant toast. Victory. What had he thought then? Now in the clear light of day, something unpleasant pricked at his ego, but he quickly dismissed the feeling. Katya, as usual, was silent and resentful. Nothing new. He reached for his phone, checking his emails. Amidst the advertising newsletters and work notifications, his gaze landed on a letter from a notary's office. "What is this nonsense?" he thought, opening the message. Alexander skimmed the text and his face began to flush. A notification regarding the termination of the right to use residential premises. The apartment they lived in belonged to Maria Semyonovna, his mother-in-law. The right to reside there had been granted verbally, without any formal registration, and now this letter was revoking that right. 30 days to vacate the premises. The world around Alexander seemed to swim. He reread the letter, hoping it was some kind of mistake, a ridiculous prank. Rage washed over Alexander. How dare she? This drab mouse, this farmhand, as he mentally referred to her, was throwing him out onto the street. Him, Alexander, with his 2 university degrees, promising career, and societal connections. It was unthinkable, absurd. He leaped from the bed, pulling on his trousers as he went. Katya was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. He burst into the kitchen like a hurricane. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared, throwing his phone onto the table in front of Katya. Coffee splashed from the cup, burning Katya's hand. She flinched, but said nothing. Katya slowly picked up the phone and read it carefully. There was no surprise or fear in her eyes, only a peculiar, unfamiliar firmness. "It means you need to find yourself another place to live, Sasha," Katya replied calmly, putting the phone aside. "Are you out of your mind? Do you understand what this means for me? Where will I live?" Alexander couldn't believe her composure. He had expected hysterics, tears, pleas for forgiveness, but before him stood a different, unfamiliar Katya. "Are these your problems, Sasha?" Katya turned back to the stove, stirring something in a pot. "You're a grown man. You should handle your own affairs." "How can you say that, after all I've done for you?" Alexander attempted to take her hand, but Katya pulled it away. "What have you done for me, Sasha?" Steel laced Katya's voice. "You think you provided for me? Yes, you brought in money, but you never considered it a contribution to the family. You always emphasized that you were doing me a favor, that I should be grateful to you for being with me." "But that's true," Alexander protested. "I could have found a better wife from a respectable family." "Then go, Sasha. Go find her," Katya shrugged. "No one is holding you back, and I will remain here with my farmhand mother in my disreputable apartment." Alexander gasped with rage. He couldn't comprehend that this quiet, submissive woman, whom he considered his property, had suddenly risen against him. He tried to soften his tone, to speak gently. "Katya, what are you saying? We are a family. We have a child. You can't just destroy everything over some petty grievance." "Petty grievance?" Katya turned to him, her eyes blazing. "You have been tormenting my mother for years, Sasha. You have humiliated me, compared me to her, to your elite mommy. Do you think I didn't see that? Didn't feel it? I endured it because I loved you, hoping you would change. But yesterday, you crossed the line. You insulted the person dearest to me." "But I apologized," Alexander tried to justify himself. "Your apologies are worthless, Sasha." Katya shook her head. "You don't regret what you said. You only regret the consequences." Alexander understood he had lost. He attempted to play on sympathy, to bring up their son, the years they had spent together. But Katya remained resolute. "You have 30 days, she repeated. "I will help you find an apartment if you wish, but you will not live here any longer." At that moment, Maria Semyonovna entered the kitchen. She silently placed the kettle on the table and poured herself a cup of tea. "Mom," Katya said softly, "I've told him everything." Maria Semyonovna nodded, not looking at Alexander. "I always knew you were a strong girl," she said, addressing Katya. "It just took time for you to realize it." Alexander felt blood rush to his face. He stood between the two women, as if caught between two walls. He understood he had lost, completely and irrevocably. You have no right," he croaked, addressing Maria Semyonovna. "This is my home." Maria Semyonovna calmly sipped her tea. "You are not registered," she replied. "I deliberately did not register you. I sensed this would happen. But that's illegal. I'll sue." "Sue away." Maria Semyonovna shrugged. "Good luck." Alexander fell silent. He knew she was right. He was legally defenseless. He was accustomed to solving problems with connections and money, but that wouldn't work here. Here, there was only truth, and the truth was not on his side. He looked at Katya. There was no sympathy or regret in her eyes, only determination. He knew it was over. "You'll regret this," he said quietly, but his voice lacked conviction. "You both will regret this." Katya said nothing. Maria Semyonovna merely shook her head. Alexander turned and left the kitchen. He could hear them conversing softly behind him. He felt humiliated and insulted, but most of all, he was tormented by fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being left alone. In the living room, he saw the belongings Katya had packed for him, carelessly stuffed into an old travel bag. His favorite sweater, his toothbrush, a few books, all he had managed to accumulate over the years of their marriage. He looked at a photograph on the dresser. It showed him and Katya, happy, young, in love, full of hope. He remembered how much he had loved her then, or at least thought he had. He picked up the photograph and hurled it against the wall. The glass shattered, fragments scattering across the room. Alexander packed his things. His movements were sharp and nervous. He crumpled shirts, throwing them into the suitcase as if venting his anger on the inanimate fabric. Katya stood in the doorway, observing him with an impassive expression. Silence filled the room, broken only by the rustle of fabric and Alexander's heavy breathing. He zipped up the suitcase, pressing down on the lid with force, as if trying to contain not only his belongings, but his own shattered hopes. He stood up, surveying the room where he had recently felt like the master. Now it was a foreign space, filled with comfort and warmth to which he had never truly adapted, which he had disdained as a sign of provincialism. He stopped before Katya. "Do you even realize what you've done?" he gritted out. "You've ruined my life." Katya shook her head. "You ruined it yourself, Sasha. I merely helped you see the truth." Alexander smirked, but there was no mirth in his smile. "Truth? Your truth is envy. Envy of my education, of my position. Did you always feel inadequate next to me?" "No, Sasha," Katya replied calmly. "I felt inadequate when I saw how you demeaned my mother, how you disregarded my feelings, how you considered yourself superior to others. It's not about education. It's about humanity." He said nothing, merely shot her a malevolent glance, turned, and headed towards the nursery. There, their son, little Misha, was playing on the floor. He was engrossed in building a tower of blocks, oblivious to the tension in the air. Alexander knelt before him. "Misha," he said softly, "Daddy is leaving." Misha looked up at him with his large, trusting eyes. "Where?" "Somewhere else, but I will visit you." Misha frowned, as if trying to grasp the meaning of these words. Then he turned away from his father and crawled over to Maria Semyonovna, who was sitting in an armchair, watching the scene unfold. He nestled against her, hugging her legs. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat. He extended his hand, wanting to stroke his son's head, but stopped. He felt like an outsider, an intruder in this small world he had so diligently tried to destroy. Maria Semyonovna looked up at Alexander. There was no schadenfreude or triumph in her gaze, only sadness and a quiet wisdom. "Education, Alexander," she said softly. "It's not a diploma. It's behavior. It's the ability to respect other people, regardless of their background or position. You received a good education, but you never learned to be a person." Alexander said nothing, stood up, picked up his suitcase, and headed for the exit. He paused at the door and turned back. Katya remained in place. Her face was impassive. He left the apartment slamming the door. The stairwell was quiet and dark. He descended the stairs, feeling with every step that he was moving away from his past life, from a life where he considered himself special, chosen, deserving of more. Now he was alone, without support, without love, without a home. Silence descended upon the apartment. Katya walked to the window and looked down, seeing Alexander emerge from the building, get into a car, and drive away. She watched him go for a long time, until the car disappeared from view. Then she turned to her mother. "Mom," she said softly, "thank you." Maria Semyonovna walked over to her and hugged her. "Everything will be all right, Katyusha. Everything will be all right." Katya pressed against her mother, feeling her warmth and support. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. She knew that many difficulties lay ahead, but she no longer feared them. She had her mother, she had her son, and she had hope for a new, better life. In the evening, after Misha had fallen asleep, Katya and Maria Semyonovna sat in the kitchen drinking tea. "Mom," Katya said, "I will never forget what you have done for me." "Nonsense, my child," she replied. "I simply protected you and myself. He always considered us beneath him. For all these years, I grew tired, so tired of proving to him that I was worth something. Maria Semyonovna took her hand. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Katyusha. You are a wonderful woman, a loving mother, and a remarkable daughter, and that is enough. But what about him? How will he live? He's an adult. He'll figure it out. The main thing is that you and Misha are happy. Katya sighed. You're right, probably. Of course you are. You know, Katya, I always wanted everything to be good for you. I worked my entire life so you could have this apartment, so you would never want for anything. But I never thought money and an apartment could cause such unhappiness. It's not about the money, Mom. It's about him, his attitude towards us. I know, my child, I know. But remember, true value is not social status or money. It's love, respect, and the support of loved ones. Katya nodded. I will remember, Mom. They sat in silence for a long time, gazing out the window. Outside, the city hummed, living its ordinary life. And in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, two women were beginning a new chapter in their lives. A life where there was no longer any room for arrogance, lies, and humiliation. Only love, respect, and hope. Katya looked at her mother. The wrinkles on her face seemed even deeper, but her eyes shone with warmth and wisdom. She realized that it was precisely this woman, humble and simple, who was her true anchor and support, and that it was in this small apartment, filled with comfort and love, that her true home was located. Emma.